Well, look, Camilla, I think as the Prime Minister said over the weekend, people voted for change at the last general election, and at the moment people aren't feeling that change, and I think that's reflected in the results on Thursday. And you know, if I think about the NHS, for example, where we are making real progress, waiting lists have fallen 6 months in a row, the 2 million more appointments we promised in our first year, we actually delivered 7 months early. We're now standing at over 3 million. You know, if you're one of the people who's come off the waiting list, you'll be delighted. But if you're one of the 7 million cases still on the waiting list, you're probably shouting at the telly at this very moment saying,
have you ever seen a politician really uncomfortable on live TV? That's exactly what unfolded in a recent GB News interview, where Labour MP Wes Streeting suddenly found himself under intense scrutiny. Presenter Camilla dropped the usual soft-touch approach often reserved for left-leaning politicians and went straight on the offensive. Her questions were blunt, focused and relentless, giving him very little room to manoeuvre. Streeting clearly looked unsettled, stumbling as he tried to defend Labour's increasingly fragile reputation and a growing list of contentious policies. Before we go any further, are you enjoying the video so far? If you are, please give it a like, share it with others, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Now, let's get back to the story.
You'll be delighted, but if you're one of the 7 million cases still on the waiting list, you're probably shouting at the telly at this very moment saying, don't tell me things are improving, I'm still waiting. So it's a good example, whether it's waiting lists, whether it's interest rates falling, whether it's wages rising faster and higher than inflation. These are moves in the right direction. Will people be feeling the benefits of that yet? No. That's why the Prime Minister said he wants to go further and faster on delivering real improvements that people feel. Because if they don't feel it by the next general election, they will look for change elsewhere.
Political interviews often feel like they're running on autopilot. The presenter asks the usual safe, predictable questions. The politician rolls out their well-rehearsed answers, and the whole exchange ends without telling us anything new or useful. But what happens when a presenter decides to ditch the script altogether? That's exactly what we saw in the recent clash between Camilla Termine and Wes Streeting on GB News. This was no standard back and forth. From the very first moments, Camilla went straight on the attack and didn't soften a single blow. Instead of opening with polite chit-chat, she went directly to the figures. Of the 285 seats under Streeting's watch, Labour had lost 197. Then came the killer line, so you're actually less popular now than you were in 2021, even during your so-called political honeymoon. No gentle warm-up, no padding, just a hard statistic laid bare. It was a sharp break from the usual style of political interviews, where guests are often allowed to coast through on slick soundbites and carefully polished evasions. Camilla wasn't interested in any of that. Every time Streeting tried to steer the conversation back to familiar talking points, she cut him off and dragged it back to the issues voters actually care about. And she didn't just ask tough questions, she came armed with evidence. Quoting Labour MP Dan Carden, she painted a bleak picture of everyday life in Britain: stagnant wages, rising prices, dying high streets, and public services pushed to the brink, all while politicians dish out empty promises. Suddenly, Streeting wasn't just defending Labour's record, he was under fire from voices inside his own party. The strain really started to show when he tried to respond with statistics about wage growth and shorter NHS waiting lists. Once again, Camilla pushed back, challenging the gap between those numbers and the reality people are living day to day. On paper, things might look acceptable, but for ordinary people, they clearly don't feel that way. This wasn't a standard interview. It felt more like a public cross-examination, and for once, the politician had nowhere to hide.
Well, we'll get on to further and faster. Let's just read an alternative narrative to the one that you've just spun me there. People have had enough. Enough of low wages and sky-high bills. Enough of high streets being left to rot. Enough of crumbling infrastructure and public services that don't work. Enough of broken promises. Do you know who said that? It was your Labour colleague, the Labour MP Dan Carden. So even your own colleagues think that you're doing a bad job.
Well, I agree with Dan on every single word you've just read out there. I agree with him entirely, and I think that's the impatience people are feeling. That's why people are hungry for change, because all of those challenges, and there are many more that I could list besides, were challenges we walked into last July. And turning around the country with multiple and deep crises does take time. So the impatience that people are feeling, I feel, and that's one of the reasons why, in my day-to-day work, I'm constantly constantly driving to go faster. I'm always being told by people to slow down. You know, I'm going harder.
For most people, there's still no sign of real change. If you're one of the 7 million stuck on an NHS waiting list, you probably rolled your eyes or shouted at the screen when you heard claims that things are improving. Camilla wasn't buying it. She said, directly to his face, what so many people are thinking. Don't tell me things are getting better when millions are still waiting for treatment. It was a rare moment on mainstream political television where someone actually challenged the polished spin and said out loud what ordinary people are feeling. The pressure only intensified when the discussion turned to cuts to the winter fuel allowance. Camilla didn't dance around the issue. She called the policy exactly what it is, deeply unpopular. Then she asked the uncomfortable but necessary question, what about delaying help with heating costs for elderly people? Isn't that just political backtracking? Criticism of the policy has been loud, even from the government's own supporters. For many, it's been described as the final straw, the moment they turned their backs on Labour altogether. But Camilla didn't stop there. She held her ground and labelled it one of the worst proposals Labour has ever put forward. Didn't she, Mr. Streeting? And as he stumbled through a defence of a policy he clearly didn't believe in, it was obvious to anyone watching that he was struggling. Camilla's body language spoke volumes. She leaned forward, fixed him with her gaze, her movements sharp and deliberate. Nothing was being allowed to slide. No vague answers, no rehearsed sound bites, just direct accountability. That kind of toughness is rare, particularly in a media environment too often filled with gentle interviews and pointless questions. The real unravelling came when the conversation shifted to Lucy Powell's controversial remarks on grooming gangs. Under Camilla's steady, unflinching questioning, Streeting's answers began to fall apart. They no longer sounded sincere, just scripted, strained and uncertain. Then came another moment of exposure. Asked about the North East London NHS Trust's stance on gender issues, he tried to sidestep the question. Camilla wouldn't let him. Eventually, he admitted he didn't even understand why the statement had been issued in the first place. It was a rare, unfiltered moment. A politician stepping away from the script, exposed not through aggression but through persistent, honest questioning. And it happened because Camilla refused to play along. This interview was a powerful reminder of what can happen when journalists actually do their job, holding those in power to account. Watching a senior politician squirm under genuine scrutiny made one thing painfully clear. Why isn't this the norm? The uncomfortable truth is that too many political journalists rely on access. They need politicians to keep turning up, and asking hard questions risks burning those bridges. But when access matters more than truth, it's the public that loses. Camilla showed there's another way, a better way, where honesty matters more than keeping everyone comfortable. And if we're serious about democracy, we need far more of it. Because the real issue isn't the occasional soft interview. It's that political journalism has drifted towards comfort and convenience instead of accountability. And when that happens, democracy doesn't collapse overnight, it erodes, slowly, piece by piece. Wes Streeting's discomfort wasn't a mistake. It was proof that tough interviews work. And it's exactly what we should be seeing more of, not less. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.